back to the MMA Training Bible's Guide to Peak Performance. And of course, you know what we covered in the first 4 sessions, and we don't want to dwell too much on that because what really matters is what we cover in this, the last session, session 5, programming the training sessions. So officially, welcome to the final session, session 5, programming the training sessions across your fight plan. Specifically in this session, I'm going to show you how to program resistance and endurance training sessions across your entire fight plan, which will include, of course, the general prep phase and the longer plans, and the fight-specific phase and the fight camp and the taper and the transition and all the plans. And we're also going to talk about the types of sessions that you should include in recovery weeks, and we're going to talk about warm-ups and cool-downs. We're going to cover a lot here. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover in this session. And of course, in the longer 12 and 6-month plans, we're going to start with the general prep phase, but we start with the fight-specific phase in the shorter, the 4 and the 3-month plans. And then we'll schedule workouts for the fight camp, and then we're going to schedule the whole taper and the transition, and we're going to talk about recovery weeks and warm-ups and cool-downs along the way. Okay, so if you recall from the Science of MMA course, I taught you how to manipulate factors like work-to-rest ratio to target different energy systems and to build unstoppable endurance, and I shared a whole bunch of endurance workouts with you to that end. I also taught you how to manipulate things like the load and repetitions to develop things like muscular endurance and hypertrophy and strength and, of course, power. And again, I gave you a whole bunch of workouts. It's time to show you how to place those workouts into your training plan to develop peak performance. Now, our general approach here is really in this pyramid, and I want to talk you through it. Again, we covered this before, but we're going to recap just so we're on the same page. Now, at the base of the pyramid, we focus on developing the aerobic energy systems alongside muscular endurance. This foundational work occurs mostly in the general prep phase, which it's always found in the longer plans. Again, it's not found in the shorter plans because we assume that fighters who are competing in a few months have adequately developed their fitness in this capacity. But we also focus on these goals in the transition, so it's not the end of the world. Now, after we shift focus to aerobic glycolysis alongside muscular hypertrophy as we move up this pyramid, now this shift happens towards the end of the general prep phase in the longer plans and at the beginning of the fight-specific prep phase otherwise. As we ascend the pyramid and move through the fight-specific phase, we start to focus on anaerobic glycolytic energy systems as well as the development of muscular strength and power. And as we move into the fight camp and taper, higher intensity efforts focus on the ATP-PCR system, which, again, even though it's an anaerobic energy system, you can still develop the aerobic energy systems when you train it, so that's why we do it. Also, because of course MMA requires a combination of muscular endurance and strength and power, we focus on all of those in the fight camp and taper. Okay, so now I hope you understand our general approach here. Now, what I'd like to do now is go into a bit more detail about how we assign specific workloads to specific phases and specific workouts right across your whole fight plan. Now, I've created a document called the MMA Training Bible's Guide to Peak Performance that assigns different workouts to different phases of your fight plan. And you can download this in the Document Center, but I'm going to go ahead and open it here and we can look at it and see how it's structured. So let's bring it up. So here's the title page, the first page you'll see, Programming Across the Fight Plan. When you download this, it's a little disclaimer here. And then here's the table of contents. You can see it's broken down. We have general preparatory phase workouts, fight-specific preparatory phase workouts, fight camp workouts, taper workouts, transition workouts, recovery, warm-ups, cool-downs, and flexibility. We talk about the fight simulation. I also give you sample resistance training workouts, A, B, C, D, and E, if you remember that. And I give you the training log template. And I also think it's important to remind you of important things like, say, for example, overtraining signs and symptoms. But this is the first thing that we want to talk about right here. Okay, so remember, you only have the general prep phase in the longer plans. Also, all of this should seem a little bit familiar because we covered it all in detail in the Science of MMA course. So I'm only going to give you a review of this document just to save a little bit of time. And if you want, of course, more details about why these workouts are structured the way they are, I suggest that you go back and rewatch the Unstoppable Endurance lecture for a full description of the endurance workouts, and the explosive strength and power lecture for a full description of those resistance training workouts. And also you should rewatch the flexibility and warm-ups lecture because I'm sure that will help you out too. So, okay, let's give you a little overview of what we're looking at here, and let's start with the top. Let's talk about endurance workouts. So as I mentioned, you can see at the top of this table, it shows you workouts that you can use to build endurance. The main headings include the work to rest ratio, the work interval, the rest interval, the metabolic target, which we'll use in your fight plan. That's pretty important. And there's a few example workouts, and I hope you find those useful. And most importantly, the phase of training that each workout should be placed into. Now, in general, workouts at the top of the table are scheduled earlier in the general prep phase. Workouts lower in the table should be scheduled in the middle and later stages of the general preparatory phase. Now, what you'll notice is that the work interval is longer at the beginning of the general prep phase, and it gets shorter as you go along. In this way, you increase intensity across the general prep phase, and the rest interval also actually increases. The one exception to this, it's the last row here, which features a work to rest ratio of 1:3 to 1:4, which we use across the 6-month general prep phase as well. So all you need to do is refer to your fight plan to determine whether you're in the early, mid, or late phase of your fight plan. Then simply select the appropriate workout and just put it in there. Now, as you can see, the bottom half of this table shows resistance training workouts. The headings include, as you can see, training load, training volume, rest intervals, exercise selection and order, along with the sample workout, followed by the phase of training again. Now, the training load, it's important to note, as we'll use this as a goal in our fight plan, and we're going to talk more about this shortly. Another important thing to note here in the example is the workout. Now, if you recall from the lecture on building explosive strength and power, I shared a document with you titled The MMA Training Bible's Guide to Explosive Strength and Power, which we covered training techniques, and we provided you with a whole bunch of sample workouts. Now again, just for simplicity, I've taken those sample workouts and placed them at the end of this document. I think it's around page 11. So here, importantly, when the table is referring to workouts A or B or C or D or E, just simply jump to page 11 or wherever it is in this document just to see what it actually entails. Now, if you need further description of the techniques, you'll need to go back to the original document titled The MMA Training Bible's Guide to Explosive Strength and Power, which covers training techniques in great detail. And again, that can be found in the Science of MMA course, which you should have access to. Now, the most important thing to note here is that the emphasis shifts from developing muscle endurance early in the general prep phase to muscle hypertrophy towards the end of this phase. And you can see how the load and the repetitions should change to meet these goals here. Okay, let's move on. So as you can see here, we have the same setup in the fight-specific phase. So let's talk about endurance workouts first. Again, as you progress through this phase, the work-to-rest ratio increases. Also, you should be slotting endurance workouts in your fight plan from the top of the table, moving to the bottom. And again, you can use the phase of training guidance on the right side of the table to help you do this. So for example, if you have a few weeks focusing on, say, 2-minute intervals, then you drop the work interval to, say, 90 seconds, 80 seconds, 70 seconds, and you'd be working with intervals in the 60, 50, and 40-second range by the end of that phase. Now, in terms of resistance workouts, you start the fight-specific phase with a focus on muscle hypertrophy. That's somewhere in the region of 6 to 10 reps. And then you move to strength in the middle of the phase, which is somewhere around 5 to 6 reps. And then you finish out with a focus on muscle power in the late phase. And again, you can refer to page 11 to 15 in this document to learn about the specific workouts that we recommend. In this case, as you can see, it's A through E. Now, importantly, you should also incorporate the fight simulation in this phase, and this simulation is described in more detail on page 10, so let's have a look at exactly what this is. So we'll just scroll down to the appropriate section. And here we are. Okay, so importantly, the goal of the fight simulation is to mimic the demands of a typical MMA match, which it can be 3 to 5 5-minute rounds. Now the structure of this workout, it looks a bit complicated, but it's pretty simple. You're always essentially pairing a resistance movement with an endurance movement. And there are a lot of ways to progress this workout, but let's give you the simplest example. And again, it's shown here at the bottom of the table. So let's say that you've done this a few times and you're able to complete 5 rounds. Each round here is shown across the top of the table. Each round is made up of 5 blocks, which always pair a resistance movement with an endurance movement. And you have the flexibility anytime to choose anything that you like. This is, again, just an example. Now, as you can see here in round 1, the first block, we're pairing the power clean with the treadmill, specifically running, followed by 60-second rest. So you'd perform the power clean for 30 seconds, then go right to the treadmill, run for 30 seconds, then take 60 seconds of rest. Then after that, you move to block 2, which pairs the bench press and shadow boxing, each for 30 seconds, again followed by 60 seconds of rest. Then you move on to block 3, which pairs back squat with an ab exercise called bicycle, and then block 4, which pairs bench over row with pad striking, and then of course block 5, as you can see here, which pairs an ab movement with skipping. Now after you complete block 5, you take 60 seconds rest, then move to round 2. Now round 2 features 5 more blocks, and you can see the pairings here. You basically continue this until you've completed 5 rounds in this case. And so, of course, there's a few ways that you can increase the difficulty in this workout. One, it's by reducing the rest between blocks. Here, we're using 60 seconds rest, but as you get fitter, as you want more of a challenge, you'll reduce the rest from 60 seconds to 45 seconds, to 30 seconds, to 15 seconds, to ultimately no rest at all between the blocks. Now, the next way to increase the difficulty, if you want to, is to increase the number of rounds that you're completing. Anything from 2 to 5 is reasonable, but it really depends upon how fit you are. You want to start on the lower side. And there are lots of ways to progress this workout. You can increase the difficulty by pairing more challenging exercises together, or using more resistance, or working at a higher pace, for example. You can also adjust the work time for the resistance movement and the endurance movement from, say, 15 to 45 seconds. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds. Now, you're really only limited by your fitness and creativity in this exercise. That's why I like it so much. So let's go back up and talk about the next grouping of workouts. Fight camp workouts. So just like the fight specific phase, you'll find the fight camp in all of the plans. So let's talk about endurance workouts here. Now again, as you progress through this phase, the work to rest ratio increases. You should be slotting in endurance workouts in your fight plan from the top of this table moving to the bottom, and again, you can use the phase of training guidance on the right side of the table to help you do this. You can see that you're moving essentially from 30-second intervals at the beginning of the fight camp down to really short intervals in the 5 to 6 second range by its end. Now for resistance training workouts, you need to focus on muscle endurance, muscle strength, and muscle power equally throughout the fight camp because they're all individually trainable and they're all pretty important on fight day. And again, you can refer to pages 11 to 15 in this document to learn about the specific workouts that we recommend. And again, in this case, it's A through E. And again, you have the fight simulation. You should incorporate this throughout this phase. And just like the fight camp, you'll find the taper in all phases and all plans. Now remember, the goal here is to drastically reduce volume and maintain intensity. And we have specific workouts that you should include here. So for endurance workouts, this involves using very large work to rest ratios to maintain intensity while dissipating fatigue. You should be slotting endurance workouts in your fight plan again from the top of this table moving to the bottom, and again you can use the phase of training guidance on the right side of this table to help you do this. And again, you can see here that you're hovering around 30-second intervals right down to intervals as short as 5 to 6 seconds in the taper. For resistance workouts, we focus on muscle strength and muscle power equally through the taper. Now again, you can refer to page 11 to 15 in this document to learn about the specific workouts that we recommend, and again, in this case, it's A through E. Now, important point for the fight simulation. I don't recommend that you do the fight simulation during the taper because it can really build up a lot of fatigue, but some people really feel like they need it, so if this describes you, maybe just fit it in during the first week of the taper. Okay, let's talk a little bit about transition workouts. Now remember, after the fight comes the transition, and it's all about dissipating fatigue and recovering from any injuries you picked up during the fight, and of course from this long training plan. And again, we always program workouts from the top of the table to the bottom. So for endurance workouts, this means focusing on oxidative energy systems and longer work intervals, somewhere in the 5-minute range is good. For resistance workouts, this includes a focus on muscle endurance early on, followed by muscle hypertrophy and strength as you move through the phase. And for the fight simulation, I don't recommend that, again, you do the fight simulation. I don't recommend you do any fight-specific movements or training in this whole transition period, including the fight simulation, because this is really a time to get away from all your fight-specific activity. You need a mental as well as physical recovery here. Okay, let's talk about a couple other points here now. Recovery workouts. These should be incorporated throughout your entire fight plan during recovery weeks. Now, the main goal with these workouts is to allow you to recover from intense training weeks without experiencing any detraining. So you really have a lot of flexibility what you can choose here. For example, you could include non-contact, intermittent high-intensity games if you want, like basketball, or even focus on your Olympic lifting technique, which is very useful. You could also include lower intensity whole body movements like running or swimming or cycling, or depending upon your fitness, you can include more organized intervals like those that are shown here. Now, in terms of warm-ups and cooldowns and flexibility, for easy reference, I've included a brief word on warm-ups and cooldowns here. But remember, we covered this in a lot more detail in the Science of MMA lectures, so if you're confused, if you want an update, go back and watch those. Now for flexibility, this is just a quick reminder of the structure of a flexibility workout. And again, you should refer to the lecture on the Science of MMA course and the stretching techniques document in particular for more details here. All the information is there. And the remainder of the document, let's just quickly scroll through it so we have a look. So we covered the fight simulation, so you know what you're getting there. Again, these are the example workouts that I showed you. Resistance workout A with the pictures, so you know exactly what to do. Resistance workout B and C here, and D and E. And then I gave you a brief little cheat sheet with the resistance workouts. Also, if you wanted to write in your loads, reps, sets, and rest here, all of those shortened. I've given you the training log. And again, I've mentioned again overtraining signs and symptoms. There's one last thing that I wanted to mention before we get back to this lecture here. Now, we talked about how you progress your endurance and resistance training workouts in detail in the Science of MMA course, but just as a quick reminder, it's all about manipulating overload. And there are lots of ways to apply the principle of overload. If you recall, you can increase the number of exercises or sets or repetitions. You can change the rest periods. You can increase the sessions per week or even per day. You can increase the training load, that's the weight or resistance you're using, but remember, you must be cautious and conservative. You can progress by increasing the overload by using a couple rules that we talked about. You can use a 2-for-2 rule or the quantity of load increase. Okay, so let's get back to the lecture and get on with the next phase, which involves walking you through an example of how we actually program across the fight plan. Okay, so now it's time to bring this home. I'm going to walk you through an example of how we take the workouts that I just showed you and plug them into a fight plan. Now, right off the bat, you should know that there is not one right way to do this. There certainly are some wrong ways, but as long as you follow our general approach, you stick with me, you're going to be fine. It's also important to know that you don't need to program workouts across your entire fight plan right now. I'm going to show you everything across your whole fight plan, but you don't need to do that now for you. So much can happen in a short period of time that it doesn't make sense to plan so far into the future. For example, your work schedule might change, social and family life can change, and of course your adaptation to training will change, and all of these factors will influence how often you can train, also what you can do in each session. And so for these reasons, you really only need to plan 2 weeks out and really not more than a month out if you really want to get crazy. I recommend, again, just programming workouts in the sub-phase that you're about to complete. Now, just to be thorough, again, I'm going to take you through an example of programming a whole fight plan so that you can see how it's done. I recommend that you keep on coming back to this lecture as you program your sub-phases until you get the hang of it, and I'm sure you will. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this specific example, the step-by-step process. Now, to save a little bit of time, I've gone ahead and I filled in this entire fight plan, so it will look a little bit different from where we left off last time, but don't worry, I'm going to take you through everything that I've done step by step. So, to get started, the first thing that you should do is schedule when you're going to complete our testing battery. And you should plan on going through the testing battery certainly before you start the plan, because this will serve as a baseline for measuring all your future adaptations. After this, I recommend scheduling the testing battery every 1 or 3 months or so, somewhere in that range. Now, in this example, you can see that I've slotted in the testing battery. Let's see here. First, right here, that's at the very beginning of the plan. This is in sub-phase 1, and then we've scheduled it again at the end of sub-phase 1, so roughly about a month or so. And then that brings us right into the fight camp. And so after sub-phase 2, we've scheduled it again, and there's not really a big reason to schedule another fight or another testing battery in here in this time. So we've just scheduled it again at the end of the transition, and that takes us into our next fight plan. So separate from this and the example, I recommend that you schedule the testing battery at the end of a recovery week to make sure that you're always, as best as you can, adequately rested and free of fatigue. This will help make your results in these testing batteries more comparable. Again, you should refer to the lecture in the Science of MMA course for details on conducting this testing battery, because everything that you need to know is there. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to schedule our training goals. Now, this is the important point to tell you that you should be pausing this video and completing it as I complete it, because I don't want you to get too far behind. It can get rather intimidating if you're not keeping pace with me. So, moving forward, I'm going to assume that you're pausing this video and then going through these steps as I'm describing them. Okay, so back to training goals. Now, after you've set your testing dates, we want to write in your resistance and your endurance training goals across your whole fight plan. Now, remember, the 3-month plan assumes that you have a solid base of aerobic fitness and muscular fitness, so there is no general preparatory phase. We jump right into the fight-specific phase. So, for resistance training, you should focus on muscular endurance and muscular strength and muscular power across the whole fight-specific phase, because all of those factors are important. You need them on fight day. For endurance training, you'll focus on aerobic glycolysis and buffering throughout this whole fight-specific phase. And then, just like that, we're into the fight camp and then the taper. And here, for resistance training, you'll focus on, again, muscular endurance and muscular strength and muscular power evenly over the first 6 weeks of the fight camp. And then you start to focus on maintenance for the last 4 weeks, which includes the taper. Now, this is because, if you recall, any training adaptation that will result from these last 4 weeks of training won't present until after the fight, and that's rather useless to us, so we focus on maintenance in those last 4 weeks. The goal here is to train at a high intensity and drop the volume, and that allows us to dissipate fatigue and hopefully avoid detraining, and that will ultimately result in a peak in your performance, which is what we're after for that fight. So for endurance training, we focus on anaerobic glycolysis and the ATP-PCR system and buffering workouts over the first 6 weeks of the fight camp, just like resistance training. And then again, we focus on maintenance in those last couple of weeks, those last 4 weeks. And then after the taper, that brings us into the transition. And then the main goal for the transition is just restoration, recovery. And so that's really the main goal for the whole transition. Making sure that we don't have a lot of sport-specific activities, MMA-specific activities, making sure that you recover from any injuries, and then you move on to the next fight plan. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is schedule your workouts for the first subphase. And first off, you're going to need to decide on how often and what days you want to work out. And here we're just focusing on your endurance and resistance training workouts, but you'll obviously need to build this around your MMA specific training sessions. And I can't tell you what the magic number is for you. I can only suggest that you need to have open communication with your coaches to determine whether your time is better spent adding another resistance or endurance session or picking up another MMA specific session. I'll also remind you that it's better to start out with less sessions and work your way up per week. This is a conservative approach that can help you avoid overtraining. Otherwise, it's also good to space your workouts out across the week, which gives you a little bit more recovery time within the week. Okay, so let's go ahead and start getting into this first subphase and show you exactly what we've done here. So this is subphase 1. We're looking at 5 training weeks, and this is a developmental subphase, and we're looking at a 4-to-1 loading plan. So we're progressively increasing our training difficulty, and then we have a recovery week. And so let's have a look here. The very first workout here, which is scheduled for a Monday, is performance testing, as I mentioned before. And then we have our first endurance workout. Here, we're focusing on 3-minute work intervals. We're going to try to perform 5 or 6 of those. So you basically, for this workout, you would run for 3 minutes or some other whole body movement. You would take 3 minutes off, and then you would have a 1-minute buildup. This 1-minute buildup, it's light jogging, progressively increasing your pace until you get to your working pace at the end of that 1 minute, and then you blast off for your next work interval for 3 minutes. So this 1-minute buildup, it's important for building up your pace so you're not starting from a dead stop. It helps to make sure that you're hitting the interval time precisely as we need you to, 3 minutes. And also it might help to avoid injury. You're not going from stationary position resting up to your interval pace. So that's your endurance workout. And here we have a resistance workout. And we can see the reps. It's 12 to 15, which suggests that we're focusing on muscle endurance. The volume, we're going to try to do 2 to 3 sets, and the rest is going to be 30 to 45 seconds. And notable here, it's workout B. If you go back to the document, the big document with all of the workouts in it, you can look up at workout B and you can see exactly the exercises that you're supposed to be doing here. And the next endurance workout, it's 5 to 6 times, 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off, 1-minute build up, except now we're going to try to do MMA specific movements. So it could be striking or grappling or another technical or tactical MMA specific movement. Because after all, this is the fight specific phase, and we want to try to make sure our workouts are similar in nature to the sport, in this case, mixed martial arts. And here's our second resistance workout for the week. And here we're going to be focusing on a load of 4 to 5 repetitions, so it's heavy, for a volume of 3 to 5 sets and a rest interval of 3 to 4 minutes, and we're using workout E. It's important to remember that workouts A, B, and C feature traditional strength training workouts. Workouts D and E feature power-based movements, and so the movements themselves are going to be a little bit different there. They're going to encourage more power-based explosive movements. So whenever you see workouts D or E being used, it's a power-based workout. Whenever you see workouts A, B, or C, it's not a power-based workout, it's more of a traditional strength training workout or hypertrophy or muscular endurance. But this pattern where we have a muscular endurance workout at the beginning of the week and then a power workout at the end of the week, we're going to maintain this throughout this whole plan. The only thing that's going to shift is whether that first workout is in a muscular endurance or muscular strength workout. So as we move on from week 1, let's see what week 2 brings us. So we're starting off with a resistance workout. The load is 4 to 5 reps. We're looking at a volume of 2 to 6 sets, 3 to 4 minutes rest, and it's workout C. So we see that our workout has changed from the beginning of last week's workout, workout C. This is also a strength workout, so we're using a traditional strength training movements. Here, we're working on 2-minute intervals. So we're going to try to perform 5 to 6 2-minute intervals. So you're going to be working for 2 minutes, off for 7 minutes, and then you have a 1-minute build-up. And back to the resistance workout. Now again, this is a power-based workout because it's workout D. The load is 4 to 5 reps, and we're going to be going through 3 to 5 sets with, again, 3 to 4 minutes rest. And then our next endurance workout, again, it's a 2-minute block, 7 minutes off, 1-minute build-up, 5 to 6 of those. But again, we're going back to MMA-specific movements here. So you can see how the training difficulty progressed from the first week to this week, mostly by decreasing the endurance interval, which makes it more intense and a little bit more difficult. Also, this week has been increased in training difficulty because now there's a fight simulation. And if you want to remember the exact details of fight simulation, go back and watch that relevant section early on in this video. But essentially, we're pairing 30 seconds of a resistance exercise with 30 seconds of an endurance exercise, and in this case, taking 60 seconds rest, and then going through that 5 times for 5 rounds, and a 60-second rest is taken in between each round. And then we move into week 3. So here you can see right away we're working in workout A, and we have 12 to 15 repetitions. That tells us that it's a muscle endurance workout. Our endurance workout, we're doing 8 to 10 2-minute intervals, only 2 minutes off this time, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the increasing training difficulty this week, and then the 1-minute build-up. Our next resistance workout, this is a power-based workout because it's workout E. We're going to be banging out 4 to 5 reps, 3 to 5 sets, and 3 to 4 minutes rest. And then here's our next endurance workout. It's a mirror of the first one, except here you can see we're doing MMA-specific movements. And then in the fight simulation, this is the same as the week 2 fight simulation, except one important difference. We've gone from 60-second rest between the resistance and endurance exercise down to 30-second rest. So that, again, is another factor increasing training difficulty this week. And that brings us into week 4. So what we're starting to see here is in 1 week, we're doing our first workout, our first resistance workout is going to be muscle endurance, followed by a power workout. The next week, it's going to be a strength workout, followed by our power workout, which is right here. The next week, it's back to a muscle endurance workout, and then focusing again on our, there it is, power workout. So we know what's coming here. We know it's going to be a strength workout. In this case, it's workout B. And then we move on to our endurance workout, which is 6 to 8 intervals. 2-minute intervals in this case, 45 seconds off, so the rest is decreased, 15-second build-up. And we're back to our power workout again for that second workout of the week, 4 to 5 repetitions, it's workout D. You can see the rest of the structure of the workout. And then we can go back to our endurance workout, same structure as the first one this week. Again, it's MMA-specific movements. And then at the end of this week, we're focusing on the fight simulation again, and everything stays the same except for that rest after the resistance and endurance movements. It was 30 seconds last week, now it's down to 15 seconds. And that takes us into our recovery week. Very important after such a long period of training. In this case, it's going to be 10 to 20 minutes of light activity, 50% of your max heart rate. And the resistance workout, it's not really a resistance workout, it's really a technical workout. We're focusing in this case on technical development in those Olympic lifts, which is very important, and we all know that there's room for improvement in our technique in Olympic lifts and a lot of power movements. So this is when you can master that. So this is time very well spent. And with that, we move into our second subphase, and this is our shock subphase. So here we are in the fight camp. You can see that we've decreased the work interval down to 90 seconds for this first endurance workout, and we're gonna complete about 7 to 8 of those. So it's 90 seconds on, 5 minutes off with a 1-minute build-up, and it's a whole body movement. And then the next day, it's a muscle endurance workout, 2 to 3 sets, 30 to 45 seconds rest, workout C. And then we're back to the endurance workout. It's the same structure as the first one this week, except it's an MMA specific movement. And then we're back to our power-based workout. We've dropped the repetitions here. We're only in the 3 to 4 rep range, and we're using workout E. And then we come down to this fight simulation, and it's the same structure as the last one. So we're still working with 15 seconds rest. But we've made some changes that really make this a rather difficult shock subphase, primarily with the endurance work, dropping that interval down. And then we move into week 7 in our second subphase. We can see that our first workout, it's a resistance workout here, and it's workout A, 3 to 4 reps. So this is a strength workout. In our endurance workout, we've dropped the interval again. And so this is going to be a challenging interval to work with. We're doing 8 to 10 60-second work intervals with 4 minutes off and 1 minute build-up. That's a whole body movement. And back to the resistance power-based workout, 3 to 4 reps, so we're still working with that. And then our endurance workout, it's the same structure as the first workout of the week again, except now it's an MMA-specific movement. And that brings us to our fight simulation. The big difference here, we've decreased the rest. So now it's 30 seconds on your resistance movement, 30 seconds on your endurance movement, no rest, and then you go back to your resistance and endurance, and you keep on going through that 5 times. So this is a very challenging fight simulation, and in structure it's very similar to what you would experience in a fight in terms of work to rest ratio. And that brings us into our 8th week in the second subphase. We're back to our muscle endurance workout here with workout B. And our endurance workout, we've dropped the interval again. Now we're working with 30-second intervals. So in total, we're going to try to aim to complete 6 to 8 30-second intervals with 1 minute off and then 30-second build up. And then our resistance workout, this is our power-based workout. We've seen this before, 3 to 4 reps, workout E. And here's our second endurance workout, same structure as the first one this week. But again, you know what's happening here. It's MMA-specific movement. And that brings us to the end of this very difficult training block. And you can see the fight simulation. It's the same structure as the last one. And that takes us into this very, very important recovery week in week 9. And it's the same thing we've seen before. It's our light endurance workout, and then we have another resistance workout that's mostly technically focused. And that brings us into our third subphase. And this is the developmental subphase featuring a 1, 2, 3, 4 week loading plan, and there's no recovery week. And so this requires a bit of an explanation. Now, normally, as you've seen here, we would have a recovery week after our series of weeks, or even after a couple shock weeks, we'd have our recovery week. But here, I didn't want to include a recovery week at the end of this developmental subphase because immediately after it, we're moving into the taper and we're seeing very large reductions in training difficulty. And so I thought if we had a recovery week right here, it might encourage potentially some detraining. And so we decided to just train through this week with the hopes that we're going to be able to dissipate all the fatigue from this whole fight plan in weeks 14 and 15. So with that said, let's talk about what we're going to do in this third subphase starting in week 10. So you can see the work interval has dropped down to 15 seconds. So 15 seconds on, 1.5 minutes off with the 30-second build up. I'm going to try to do about 10 of those. And then here we can see we've dropped the number of repetitions. So the load is increased in this strength workout, workout C. We're down to 2 to 3 reps. And then our next endurance workout, the structure here is a little bit different. It's going to be 6 seconds on with 1 minute light jog, 15 of those. It's a very high intensity workout and it's MMA specific movements. And then here's our next power-based workout with workout D. And then we're back to the fight simulation. And again, this fight simulation stays the same. It's really about as difficult as a fight simulation can get in terms of structure. And that brings us into our next, our 11th week in the third developmental subphase. We're back to a muscle endurance workout here. And you can see here is our next endurance workout. It's 15 times 10 seconds on, 1.5 minutes off with 30-second buildup, and this is MMA specific movements. And then we're back to our power-based workout with 2 to 3 repetitions. And then here, it's a slightly different structure again. We're doing 6 times 6 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and then you take 3 minutes off and you perform that whole block 3 to 6 times. And that's an MMA specific movement as well. And then we have this fight simulation again. And now, as we start to move beyond week 11, then something happens here. we're seeing a change in training goals because any training that you do this close to the fight within these 4 weeks up to the fight, the adaptations aren't going to present until after your fight. So our training goals, as I mentioned before, shifts towards maintenance. So let's see how that affects the type of workouts that we choose. So here we have our first resistance training workout of the week. It's a strength-based workout, except now the volume decreases. We're doing less sets, so you're in the 2 to 4 range and 5 minutes rest, and it's going to be workout B. And here is our endurance workout. So here we're focusing on 5 seconds on, 1 minute off, so it's a very large work to rest ratio. We're going to try to do 15 of those. And then here's our power-based workout, 2 to 3 reps, only 3 to 4 sets with about 5 minutes rest. And then here, this is very noticeable with the training goals here. We're going to be doing 20 seconds on, 10 minutes off, and 4 minutes build up 4 to 5 times. This is a good example of the training goal, how it matches up with our workout here. We have huge amounts of rest, but during those work intervals, you're going to be flying, you're going to be feeling great. And this really illustrates the point of the workout. You want to work hard, you want to work at a great intensity, but you want to have enough rest. You want to make sure that you're recovering from each of those intervals. And this workout does that. And then again, here's our fight simulation. I'm going to move this over a little bit so we can see everything. So that's the fight simulation, same structure as we covered previously. And then we move into week 13 here. We're focusing on muscle endurance. We've dropped the sets down. We're working with just 1 to 2, workout C. And for our endurance workout, it's 7 to 10 30-second work intervals with 5 minutes off and 4 minute build up. So again, that's a very large work to rest ratio. It's an MMA specific movement. And then here is our power-based workout, 2 to 3 reps, just 2 to 3 sets, lots of rest, workout E. And then here's our endurance workout. Again, we've seen this one before, 15 times 5 seconds on, 1 minute off with 15 seconds build up. Again, that's a very large work to rest ratio. And then that brings us into our fight simulation. Now I will say that you don't need to do this fight simulation. Some fighters feel like they need to do it mostly from a mental preparation perspective. If that's you, fantastic. But if you're feeling slightly overtrained, if you're feeling a lot of fatigue, then don't do it. You know, it's entirely up to you. Just know the risks. So this brings us into our taper period, and we want to take a closer look at this. So let me scroll over a little bit. Okay, so our first workout of the week, it's a resistance workout. We've seen it before. It's 2 to 3 reps, and now we're dropping the volume again. We're only doing 1 or 2 sets with the same level of rest, and it's workout A. And our endurance workout, here, it's only 6 to 7 intervals, 30 seconds on, 5 minutes off with 4 minute build up. Again, lots of rest here. And another power-based workout, 2 to 3 repetitions with a small volume, 1 or 2 sets, and it's 5 minutes rest, workout D. And then our next endurance workout, it's just 4 to 5 intervals, 20 seconds on, 10 minutes off, 4 minute build up. So that's that workout with a lot of rest. And then you get down to the fight simulation. But again, if you're feeling fatigued, you don't do this. If you really feel like you need to do something, maintain your mental preparedness, then go ahead and do it. But again, you know the risks here. In our final week before the fight, you can see that we've drastically reduced the number of workouts we're completing. Here, for our endurance workout, it's 15 times 5 seconds on, 1 minute off with 15-second build-up. So lots of nice rest built into that one. And then here, our last workout before the fight, it's a power-based workout, 2 to 3 reps, 1 to 2 sets, 5 minutes off. And that takes us to the fight. And then after the fight, the main goal is on recovery. So we enter the transition. And so the types of workouts that you want to see here, they're very unstructured early in the transition. And of course, this depends upon any injuries that you picked up. The transition might be prolonged as a result of that. But assuming that you're good to go, no serious injuries, then this is what you'd be looking to complete. Some unstructured recovery type workouts here. Same thing, an endurance workout. Our resistance workout, it's muscle endurance. And then we start to, after this endurance workout, we build a little bit more structure, and here's a muscle endurance workout. And then the last workout before we transition into the next fight plan, it's a little bit more structured, as I said. 3 to 4 times, 2 minutes on, 7 minutes off with a 1 minute build up. So with that, let's get back to that lecture and summarize. Okay, so that's it for our example, and here's a quick summary of everything that we did. And as you can see, we really did a lot. I hope that this session put everything into perspective for you and gave you confidence in programming all these workouts that I showed you across your entire fight plan. Now remember, once you've gotten this far, scheduling workouts across your fight plan, it's just as simple as matching up your current phase, your training phase that you're in right now, with the associated workout and the programming across your fight plan document and just slotting them in. You should also remember that you really only need to be programming workouts 2 to 4 weeks out from where you are now, because so many things can happen in just a few weeks. You can really waste a lot of time if you plan too far and then have to go back and change all of that. So really you only need to be programming just a couple weeks out from where you are now, and maybe just the sub phase that you're working through. And that's really why I recommend that you keep on coming back to this session, because I showed you every workout across the fight plan. You really just need to skip to that part of the video where you're at in your phase and just follow my example, and you should just be fine. After all, this isn't rocket science. There's no one right way to do this, and I hope that gives you some confidence to experiment. There certainly are some wrong ways to do this, but again, if you just follow my example, I can promise that you will be rewarded with peak performance on fight day. So that's it for us. Let's leave it here for now, and I wish you the best of luck and success. Take care.